Story 1. In March of 1989, a college student on spring break vanished from one of the busiest nightlife streets in northern Mexico, surrounded by thousands of tourists, bright lights, and crowded sidewalks. He disappeared within minutes. What followed became an international investigation that raised troubling questions about influence, secrecy, and how easily someone can be taken without anyone noticing. Mark James Kilroy was born on March 5, 1968, in Chicago, Illinois. He was raised in Santa Fe, Texas, by his parents, Jim and Helen Kilroy, alongside his younger brother, Keith. Mark grew up in a close-knit Catholic household and was known for his discipline, kindness, and strong sense of responsibility. As a student, Mark excelled both academically and athletically. He played multiple sports, participated in the Boy Scouts, and graduated near the top of his class at Santa Fe High School. Friends described him as dependable and cautious, someone who followed routines and stayed closely connected to his family. After high school, Mark attended Southwest Texas State University and Tarleton State University before transferring to the University of Texas at Austin, where he focused on pre-med studies and prepared for a future in medicine. In March 1989, Mark traveled with three longtime friends, Bradley Moore, Bill Huddleston, and Brent Martin, to South Padre Island, Texas, for spring break. Like many college students, their days were spent at the beach, and their nights exploring nearby entertainment areas. Several times during the trip, the group crossed into Matamoros, Mexico, a popular destination just across the border. On the night of March 13th, Matamoros was packed with an estimated 15,000 American tourists. The streets along Álvaro Obregón Avenue were crowded with people moving from one bar to the next. After visiting several establishments, the group began heading back toward the border in the early morning hours. In the dense crowd, Mark briefly stopped to speak with someone he had encountered earlier that night. His friends continued walking, assuming he would follow moments later. He never did. When Mark failed to return, his friends searched nearby streets and businesses for hours. Believing he may have crossed back on his own, they eventually returned to Texas. By morning, with no sign of him and no way to reach him, authorities were notified, and Mark was officially reported missing. At first, officials treated the case as a routine disappearance, noting that tourists occasionally reappeared days later. But as time passed with no contact, concern grew. Mark's parents traveled repeatedly to the region, distributing thousands of flyers and offering a $15,000 reward for information. His disappearance drew national attention, including coverage on America's Most Wanted on March 26th. Community members raised funds to support the search, while U.S. and Mexican authorities coordinated efforts to retrace Mark's final movements. The investigation took a major turn on April 1, 1989. Mexican federal officers operating a checkpoint along Highway 2 noticed a vehicle speeding through without stopping. Instead of intervening immediately, they followed it discreetly. The vehicle led them to a remote property outside Matamoros, known as Rancho Santa Elena. After observing the area, officers later searched nearby and noted items that raised serious concerns. The driver was identified as Serafín Hernández Garcia, a relative of individuals already known to authorities. Rather than making immediate arrests, investigators quietly gathered more information using informants. On April 9th, several individuals connected to the ranch were taken into custody, including Hernández Garcia, Elio Hernández Rivera, David Serna Valdez, Sergio Martinez Salinas, and Domingo Reyes Bustamante. During questioning, a caretaker at the ranch identified Mark Kilroy from a photograph and confirmed he had seen him at the property. Hernandez Garcia later admitted that multiple people had been harmed at the ranch over several months under the direction of a man named Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo, who exercised strict control over his followers through ritual beliefs. According to statements, Mark had been singled out during the spring break crowds, separated from his friends, and taken to the ranch. He was held there briefly before losing his life. Authorities later recovered his remains, which were formally identified through dental records on April 11, 1989. In total, investigators uncovered remains connected to at least 15 victims at Rancho Santa Elena. 3 were never identified. Mark's case stood out because he had no prior connection to the group and vanished from a crowded public street in a matter of moments. The discovery triggered an international manhunt for Constanzo, who fled to Mexico City with several followers. On May 6, 1989, after a standoff with police, Constanzo was found deceased inside an apartment. Several of his followers were later tried and received lengthy prison sentences. In the days that followed, memorial services were held in Texas and attended by thousands. Mark's parents publicly expressed forgiveness and urged others to focus on awareness, education, and prevention. They later founded the Mark Kilroy Foundation to help young people make safer choices. More than 3 decades later, questions still linger. How did Mark encounter the people who took him? Why was he chosen? And how many similar encounters go unnoticed every day? Mark Kilroy's disappearance remains a sobering reminder of how quickly a life can change and how even the most ordinary moments can conceal unseen dangers. Story 2. On a cold March morning in northern England, a young man left his family home for what was supposed to be a normal day at college. Hours later, his car was found abandoned near towering sea cliffs, parked neatly, paid for, and silent. What followed was a disappearance marked not by chaos, but by unanswered movements, digital traces, and questions that remain unresolved more than a decade later. Russell Bohling was born on December 29, 1991, to parents Christine and Roger Bohling. His family described themselves as close-knit, deeply involved in one another's lives. Russell lived in West Ella, East Yorkshire, and was studying bricklaying at Bishop Burton College in Beverley. He was described as polite, reserved, and practical, with ambitions to start his own business. His father had planned to provide Russell with £300,000 to help him launch that future, a significant opportunity that suggested long-term plans, not disappearance. Russell also lived with a speech and language disorder that caused him to say he was fine, even when he wasn't, something his family believes made him vulnerable in moments of stress. On the morning of March 2nd, 2010, Russell left home to attend college. It remains unclear whether he ever arrived. Instead, his Renault Clio was later discovered 45 miles away at Bempton Cliffs, a rugged coastal area in East Yorkshire near a disused Royal Air Force bunker. An RSPB worker noticed the car at 5 p.m. that evening. It was still there the following morning. Inside was a parking ticket showing a full day's payment made at 11:30 a.m. Russell himself was nowhere to be found. In the days before his disappearance, Russell had already exhibited unusual behavior. The Saturday prior, he vanished for 5 hours without explanation, something his family described as entirely out of character. Later investigation suggested he may have traveled to Ravenscar during that time. Initial searches focused on the cliffs, the surrounding land, and the former RAF bunker. Fire and rescue teams used heat-sensitive equipment designed to locate living persons, a decision later criticized by Russell's family. More thorough searches of the bunker occurred years later, including one in 2012 that required sealed concrete to be opened at the family's expense. Authorities noted that Russell had searched online for information about RAF Bempton and Ravenscar on the morning he disappeared. His father later shared that Russell had shown interest in artwork left inside the bunker decades earlier by an unconventional group. Information about this artwork was believed to be stored on a USB stick that was never recovered. Police explored Russell's movements in the days leading up to March 2nd. He had traveled to York, Bradford, and Bridlington for unknown reasons. His family also raised concerns about fuel levels in the car, arguing it would not have reached Bempton without refueling, despite no card use or cash withdrawals being recorded. Police have stated they believe Russell may have taken his own life. The family strongly disputes this conclusion, noting Russell's future plans, financial support, and a recording cited by police that was made years earlier when Russell was a teenager under exam stress. Russell's family pursued further searches, legal challenges, and independent reviews, all while continuing to speak publicly about their belief that his disappearance involved a third party. They have remained consistent in their position. Too many details do not align. What if Russell's final journey was influenced by someone or something he never told his family about? And what if the key to his disappearance lies not at the cliffs, but in the unanswered movements before he arrived there? Story 3. In the summer of 1973, as hundreds of thousands of young people moved toward one of the largest music festivals in American history, two teenagers set out on a journey filled with excitement and possibility. They packed lightly, trusted the road ahead, and believed they would be back within days. They were never seen again. Bonnie Bickwit was born on November 16, 1955. She was known as bright, energetic, and warm, with an easy smile and a deep bond with her family. Intelligent and independent, Bonnie had spent several summers as a camper at Camp Wilmette in upstate New York before taking a summer job there in 1973. Mitchell Mitch Weiser was born on August 8, 1955. A thoughtful and gentle young man, Mitch attended John Dewey High School in Brooklyn, where he excelled academically and nurtured a love for photography, baseball, and music. Friends described him as creative and introspective. The two met at school and quickly became inseparable. Their relationship stood out even among their peers, supportive, affectionate, and unusually deep for their age. Those close to them often remarked that Bonnie and Mitch seemed entirely focused on one another, as if nothing else existed beyond their shared world. In July 1973, the Summer Jam at Watkins Glen was announced, a massive outdoor concert featuring the Allman Brothers, the band, and the Grateful Dead. The event was expected to draw an unprecedented crowd, eventually estimated at more than 600,000 people. Mitch was determined to attend, despite strong objections from his mother. After arguing over the trip, he decided to go not with a friend, but with Bonnie, who was working at Camp Wilmette about 90 miles north of Brooklyn. Bonnie requested time off for the weekend, but was refused, having already been working long hours. She chose to quit and go with Mitch. On July 26, 1973, Mitch took a cab to Camp Wilmette, using most of his limited money, despite pleas from his family to return home and offers to pay for bus fare so he wouldn't hitchhike. Mitch refused. The next morning, July 27th, the couple ate breakfast at the camp, gathered their backpacks and sleeping bags, and made a sign reading, "Watkins Glen." A camp worker gave them a ride to Narrowsburg, New York, leaving them on State Route 97, still about 75 miles from the concert. Witnesses later reported seeing Bonnie and Mitch hitchhiking along Route 97 near Narrowsburg. A truck driver is believed to be the last person to see them together, though that account was never fully verified. They were expected home that Sunday. They never returned. Searches and investigations followed, but no physical evidence was ever recovered. It remains unclear whether Bonnie and Mitch even reached the festival. With overwhelming crowds and little oversight, an estimated 400,000 people entered the grounds without tickets, making confirmation impossible. Two primary theories emerged. One suggests the couple ran away together, possibly planning to start a new life. The other considers foul play, with no remains ever found to confirm what happened. Complicating matters, original case files, including both teens' dental records, were later reported lost, severely limiting identification possibilities. Both families worked relentlessly to find answers. Thousands of flyers were distributed, psychics were consulted, private investigators were hired. Every lead ended in silence. Decades later, the uncertainty remains, leaving families without closure. What if Bonnie and Mitch trusted the road simply because it had always felt safe before? And what if the truth of their disappearance was lost in the noise of the largest crowd the 1970s had ever seen? Story 4. In the early hours of St. Patrick's Day, 1995, 6 teenage boys vanished from the shoreline of Lake Ontario after a night that was supposed to end like so many others. There was laughter, music, and plans for the next day. By morning, every one of them was gone, leaving behind only fragments, questions, and a mystery that has endured for decades. The boys, who would later be known as the Lost Boys, were all teenagers from communities east of Toronto. Jay Boyle, 17, Chad Smith, 18, and Robbie Rumbolt, 17, were from Pickering. Jamie Lefebvre, 17, lived in Scarborough. Michael Cummins, 17, was from Oshawa, and Danny Higgins, also 17, lived in Ajax. Jay Boyle was remembered by his family as funny, loyal, and deeply devoted to those he loved. He was especially close to his parents and sisters and was already a young father. His family has said repeatedly that Jay would never have chosen to disappear and leave his daughter behind. The other boys were described as typical teenagers, social, adventurous, and familiar faces in their neighborhoods. On the night of March 16, 1995, the boys attended a party at a newly rented apartment in Pickering. Around 12:40 a.m. on March 17th, they left the gathering, reportedly planning to goof around at a nearby marina along Frenchman's Bay. Security footage later captured 3 of the boys entering East Shore Marina at approximately 1:48 a.m. Notably, only 3 appeared on camera. Not all 6. At least one witness later reported hearing a boat on Lake Ontario sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. By 3:30 a.m., 2 other teenagers reported the boys missing. Despite the concern, a large-scale search did not begin until nearly 36 hours later. By then, the trail had gone cold. The boys were believed to have taken a 14-foot Boston Whaler replica boat and a water tricycle from the marina. Neither vessel has ever been recovered. Search efforts eventually involved multiple police agencies, the military, and Coast Guard resources. The search was called off within days, though leads continued to be followed. A gas can believed to be connected to the stolen boat later washed ashore in Wilson, New York. But even that discovery raised new questions about currents and distance. Over the years, investigators considered multiple theories. One suggested the boys drowned in Lake Ontario after taking the boat out onto frigid waters. Another questioned whether something else occurred, possibly involving outside interference, given the lack of physical evidence and the delayed response. Private investigator Bruce Ricketts later reviewed the case and raised concerns about missing evidence, redacted records, and unanswered questions. He also noted inconsistencies in witness sightings and questioned why advanced underwater searches were canceled before being completed. In 1998, 2 sets of unidentified human remains were discovered in the Niagara River. One set was found in red denim pants resembling those Jay Boyle was wearing the night he disappeared. DNA testing has proven difficult, and the remains remain unidentified. For the families, time has not eased the uncertainty. Jay Boyle's home became a gathering place during the early searches, filled with volunteers and loved ones holding on to hope. His sisters grew up under the shadow of unanswered questions, facing disbelief and cruel speculation. Every year on March 17th, the families gather at Frenchman's Bay to remember the boys and to remind the public that they are still missing. They continue to hope that someone, somewhere, may finally speak up. What if the boys never made it onto the water at all? And what if the truth has been hid not by time, but by what was never fully investigated? Story 5. On a quiet summer night in a suburban Colorado neighborhood, a young man walking home from a convenience store became the focus of an encounter that no one expected, and that would soon raise difficult questions across the nation. What happened in those final moments would leave a family grieving and a community searching for clarity. Elijah Jovan McClain was born on February 25, 1996. He grew up in Aurora, Colorado, and was known to those around him as gentle, thoughtful, and deeply compassionate. Elijah was described by family members as sensitive and soft-spoken, someone who cared deeply about the well-being of others. He worked as a massage therapist and was passionate about music. Elijah often brought his violin to animal shelters, where he played calming melodies for cats and dogs waiting to be adopted. Friends said he had a childlike curiosity about the world and spoke openly about his feelings and ideas. Elijah was physically slight, weighing about 140 pounds, and had a medical condition that sometimes caused him to wear a ski mask to stay warm, even in mild weather. According to his family, this was a comfort choice, not an attempt to draw attention or cause alarm. On the evening of August 24, 2019, Elijah stopped by a convenience store before heading home. A caller contacted police to report a person wearing a mask who was acting suspicious, though the caller stated the individual did not appear to be armed and had not committed a crime. Aurora police officers encountered Elijah as he walked along the street. What followed was a brief but intense interaction. According to official reports, officers attempted to stop him, and a physical struggle ensued. Elijah was restrained and later lost consciousness. Emergency responders arrived, and Elijah was transported to a hospital. 3 days later, on August 30th, 2019, he was pronounced dead. At the time, authorities stated there was no evidence of criminal wrongdoing. Initial statements from officials indicated Elijah's death was not caused directly by police actions. However, the case did not end there. Public concern grew as body camera footage and investigative reports were reviewed. An independent investigation later raised questions about the tactics used during the encounter and the medical response that followed. In 2021, the Colorado Attorney General released a report concluding that officers involved had violated department policies and training standards. The report stated that the stop lacked legal justification and that force used was inappropriate. Criminal charges were later filed against several officers and a paramedic involved in the incident. These legal proceedings focused on accountability and policy compliance, not on intent. The case became part of a broader national conversation about policing, mental health awareness, and the treatment of vulnerable individuals. For Elijah's mother, Shanine McClain, the loss of her son was devastating. She spoke publicly about Elijah's kindness and his unique way of seeing the world. Vigils were held in Aurora and beyond, where people gathered to remember him through music, silence, and reflection. Elijah's story resonated with many who had never met him. Murals, memorials, and community events emerged, not as symbols of anger, but as calls for understanding and change. His violin became a powerful image, representing gentleness in a moment defined by confusion and loss. What if a moment of misunderstanding had been met with patience instead of force? And what if recognizing vulnerability sooner could have changed the outcome entirely? Each of these stories reminds us that disappearance doesn't always happen in darkness or isolation. Sometimes it begins with influence, trust, or a promise that feels safe in the moment. Until answers come, their stories remain unfinished, and their names deserve to be remembered. This is Vanished Stories, where the missing are never forgotten.